Hey, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I know you guys saw the title, and that's exactly what we're going to be discussing today. Aljamain Sterling needs to defeat Sean O'Malley at UFC 292. I'm going to discuss why this is the most important fight of Aljamain Sterling's entire career and why this is a career-defining legacy fight. And let's get right into it. So firstly, let's discuss Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley is 16-1, and his last fight was against Peter Yan back at UFC 280. He goes out there and has a very close competitive fight with Peter Yan. I gave the fight to Peter Yan live. I rewatched it, gave it to Peter Yan again. I do believe he won this fight 2-3 or 3-0. There's an argument that Sean O'Malley got the third round. There's an argument that Sean O'Malley got the first round. But I believe the second round was clear as day for Peter Yan. Sean O'Malley also cheated a lot in this fight, and I believe he would have gotten disqualified if Jason Herzog would have spotted the cheating examples of him in this fight. The Weasel put out an excellent video discussing the cheating tactics of Sean O'Malley in this fight. He grabbed the cage, he grabbed the gloves a lot in this fight, and he was cheating on multiple occasions. But at the end of the day, he goes out there and gets the nod against Peter Yan. Before then, he had a no contest eye poke victory against Pedro Munoz. Somehow he gets the massive jump up to the #1 contender after being like unranked to my knowledge, but you know, it is what it is. That's how Dana White is. Sean O'Malley only has a single win over someone that is still in the UFC rankings to this day. I'm not even talking about the top 15 rankings. I'm talking about the entire roster. Sean O'Malley only has a single win over someone that is still on the UFC roster today. Raulian Paiva got cut. All these guys have been cut. They are all cut. He did not get a win over Pedro Munoz either. He lost to Chito Vera. You know, he only has a single win over someone that is still on the UFC roster, and that's against Peter Yan, who happens to be on a massive losing skid right now. Now let's get into Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain Sterling is coming off of his UFC 288 highly anticipated comeback of Henry Cejudo. He was a 5-round war where Aljamain Sterling went out there and outclassed Henry Cejudo across 3 rounds. Henry Cejudo outclassed Aljamain Sterling across 2 rounds, and I gave it 3-2 Aljamain Sterling. I thought this was clear as day. People were screaming robbery in the comment sections of every post discussing this fight because, in reality, everyone wanted Henry Cejudo to win. I'm a huge Aljamain Sterling fan. I wanted Aljo to win, and I know a lot of people that wanted Aljo to win, but there's so many people that just hate Aljo. They don't even care about Henry Cejudo. Notice how none of them are talking about Henry Cejudo anymore. In the build-up to this fight, they were talking about Henry. In the build-up to this fight, they were talking about Henry as if he was the nightmare matchup. He was the scary guy. He was the double champion. No one wants to touch him. He's going to beat Aljo. He's going to take over bantamweight. What happened now? You know, no one talks about Henry Cejudo anymore. He's just that guy at bantamweight that needs to retire now. He suddenly went from the nightmare to the guy that just needs to pack it up. He needs to head back to town. You know what I mean? And there were all these excuses from people that aren't Henry Cejudo fans. They're just people that hate Aljamain Sterling and were cheering for Henry Cejudo because they wanted Aljamain Sterling to lose. Aljamain Sterling goes out there and gets the win. Before then, he beats one-arm TJ Dillashaw. This win means almost nothing because TJ Dillashaw did have one arm, but people are blaming Aljamain Sterling for this fight as if, you know, he told TJ Dillashaw to dislocate his shoulder. It's not Aljamain Sterling's fault in the slightest, and people still treat him as if it is his fault. It's ridiculous, and I absolutely love when he keeps proving the haters wrong. Before then, he outclasses Peter Yan, in my opinion. I gave the fight 3-2 Aljo, 1-2-3, and I gave it Peter Yan 4-5. So I gave it 3-2 Aljamain Sterling. I thought he won this fight. It was not a robbery in the slightest, and I don't think that this fight was a clear victor. I don't think that Aljamain Sterling clearly defeated Peter Yan, or that Peter Yan clearly defeated Aljamain Sterling. This was a very close fight, and it was honestly a coin toss. But people once again were screaming robbery. They're calling them split decision Sterling, all this stuff. And there's all this hate being spewed towards Aljamain Sterling because of his, quote, Oscar-worthy performance before then in the first fight with Peter Yan, where he got a legally knee to the head, and then some people say he was putting on an act. Go and rewatch Aljamain Sterling's earlier podcast when he was discussing this fight and why he had the reaction he did in the cage. Now, I do believe Aljamain Sterling was overselling this to an extent. I do believe that that's the case. But at the end of the day, Aljamain Sterling's training partner suplexed him onto his neck, severely injuring Aljamain Sterling's neck before this fight happened. Then the neck gets re-injured when Peter Yan knees him in the head. Aljamain Sterling's neck was severely injured by Peter Yan and his training partner, and because of this, he required surgery before he could fight Peter Yan a second time. That's why he originally pulled out of the fight, and that's why Peter Yan versus Corey Sandhagen was made for an interim title fight. Now that we've discussed both fighters, let's get into why I believe this is vindictive matchmaking by Dana White and why I believe this is malicious and targeted attacks towards the character of Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain Sterling needs to win this fight, because if he doesn't, Sean O'Malley, the spoiled child, the poster boy of the UFC, will take over and he will get everything he wants. If Sean O'Malley wins this fight, you know he's going to be calling out Chito Vera on a one-fight winning streak after getting absolutely ragdolled by Corey Sandhagen. You absolutely know he's going to be calling out Chito Vera to a title fight after this. He's not going to be calling out Merab Dvalishvili. He's not going to be calling out Peter Yan. He's not going to be calling out these tough matchups. He's going to be calling out Henry Cejudo and Chito Vera, the easiest stylistic matchups for him in the top 10. And you may ask, how is this malicious matchmaking by Dana White? The reason why is because Aljamain Sterling fought at UFC 288, and now he's having to make a very quick turnaround at UFC 292. We even heard this being discussed by Sean O'Malley in the aftermath of UFC 288 when they were in that heated exchange in the cage. And mind you, I hate those heated exchanges in the cage. I hate when they bring fighters in the cage. It never goes right. It always is corny. But at the end of the day, they had that little exchange in the cage, and Sean O'Malley's talking to Aljamain Sterling going, you better get ready to cut that weight. You better get ready to cut that weight. Why in the world would he be saying this, you may ask? Well, he's saying this because he knows, and I guarantee you, Sean O'Malley discussed with Dana White, we're going to get Aljamain Sterling to make a quick turnaround, or we're going to make an interim title fight. If he doesn't take the fight, we're going to make the interim belt, so we're going to pressure him into taking this fight. And guess what? We're going to try to get the weakest version of Aljamain Sterling possible. We're going to try to get him on a quick turnaround. We're going to try to get Aljamain Sterling 3 months after he fought Henry Cejudo, and we're trying to get him to cut that weight again, because we know Aljamain Sterling cuts a lot of weight to get down to 135, and we're going to try to get him to have to cut that weight immediately, get right back down to 135, and we're going to try to get you the easiest version of Aljamain Sterling, the weakest version of Aljamain Sterling. On the other hand, Sean O'Malley has been sitting out for 10 months waiting on the sidelines for his title shot. He's been pulling the Sneeko, sitting in the chair in the corner. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. He's been sitting out for all this time, but suddenly he's crapping on Aljamain Sterling for not wanting to make a 3-month turnaround. And mind you, Aljo took the fight, so it's not like Aljamain Sterling is ducking or turning down this fight to begin with. Aljamain Sterling is being treated terribly by Dana White. You look at the stark contrast in treatment by Dana White. You look at a guy like Sean O'Malley, who's been sitting out for 10 months, and no one's been asking Sean O'Malley to fight. We know he's been waiting on the title shot. And even so, he turned down the fight with Aljamain Sterling at UFC 288. He did not want to fight Aljamain Sterling at UFC 288 because he said he needed more time. But suddenly, once Aljo is making a quick turnaround, suddenly, just 3 months later, oh my gosh, guess what? Sean O'Malley's ready to fight. You know, Sean O'Malley's 100% prepared now. You know, at UFC 288, no. Sean O'Malley wasn't ready yet. You know, he wasn't ready to take that fight. But no, suddenly at UFC 292, that's when Sean O'Malley's ready. He needs to get a couple more, Jiu-Jitsu 101 classes in. He needs to get his 3rd stripe on his white belt, and then he'll be ready to fight Aljamain Sterling. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it's vindictive matchmaking. You will never see this kind of treatment dished out to Aljamain Sterling, and I understand why. Dana White thinks that Sean O'Malley is going to be the next poster boy of the UFC. He thinks he's going to be the next Conor McGregor when Conor McGregor retires. And it's absolutely ridiculous because, one, Sean O'Malley's never headlined a pay-per-view to begin with. He hasn't shown that he can headline a stacked pay-per-view to begin with. On top of that, he's not even good on the mic. On top of that, he's not even good on the mic. We saw him get sunned by Peter Yan, who doesn't even speak English on the mic, at UFC 280. Every time Sean O'Malley gets on the mic, he looks like a fish out of water. He looks like he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know what to say. He needs some pre-written lines to get done. You look at his little exchange with Cody Garbrandt. It was terrible. It was embarrassing. You know what I mean? He looked like a child out there. On top of that, talk about pay-per-view star, Sean O'Malley has been radio silent in promoting this fight with Aljamain Sterling. I know maybe he's trying to get his head in the ground. He's trying to put his head down and keep drilling, get that grind on. But at the end of the day, Aljamain Sterling's also grinding, and he's doing a great job promoting this fight, constantly talking about it on his podcast, posting about it, YouTube videos, all kinds of stuff like that. Meanwhile, Sean O'Malley has been radio silent and will not discuss the fight to save his life. Sean O'Malley is not a pay-per-view star. He is not the future of the UFC. He is not good on the mic, and he has one win over someone that is actively on the UFC roster. And Dana White treats him like he's the next coming of Christ. He's the second coming of Christ. It's ridiculous. This treatment will never be dished out to Aljamain Sterling, and Dana White absolutely hates Aljamain Sterling. This will be on full display, and I absolutely cannot wait for this fight. If Aljamain Sterling goes out there and beats Sean O'Malley, he goes out there, silences Sean O'Malley, and silences Dana White, We will never hear about this again. Suddenly, Sean O'Malley will go from the guy that's going to destroy Aljamain Sterling, knock him out, to, oh, Sean O'Malley was just overrated. You know, oh, well, he beat a striker. He beat a guy with no takedown defense that's a striker. We know the narrative is always going to shift the same way it always shifts in the Francis Ngannou situation. You know what I mean? It's absolutely ridiculous. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I cannot wait to see you guys again. Turn on notifications so you don't miss another upload, and I will see you guys in the next one.